Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest straw hat of them all? Oh, oh, a picture's coming in. A picture is coming in. Oh my, oh my. Oh, you guys might think I'm crazy, right? You might really think I'm crazy. But I see Nami. Nami is literally in the mirror. Her reflection, her appearance is coming out of the mirror. Oh my. Oh. Oh my. Wow. Outstanding. This magic mirror really works. Oh my. This mirror actually works. Oh, cool. Alright, so that's the opening for that. Okay. Hey everybody, my name is Clif, and I am back for a brand new video. Thank you so much for joining me. Let's get into it. Alright, so the topic of what I want to discuss in this video is actually just sort of adding on something else to the video I just made, okay? Now, to sort of explain that video, just make sure that everyone kind of understands, okay? The whole premise of what I'm trying to basically lay down, alright? The first part of the video was me sort of going over the idea that, alright, it might be easier if I start with Luffy to sort of explain, right? So, Luffy's Stealth Fruit, right, is the Hito Hito no Mi Mal Nika, right? However, you can also refer to it as the Gomu Gomu Ni, alright? And with Luffy's Stealth Fruit being the sun god, his body basically becomes rubber, right? It becomes like rubber-like. What I am sort of like thinking as a possibility, and keep in mind, that's a big possibility on whether or not Oda actually wants to do that, or even if he has to do it, right? If Luffy's body becomes rubber, or the person who eats the Nika fruit becomes a rubber in a way, then I thought it could be interesting if the Moon DT, or even an Earth DT, if their body could potentially become some kind of like permanent substance or permanent state, alright? And when going over it, right, I had to think very carefully, right? The first thing I basically did when I was trying to sort of like come up with ideas on how this could actually work, okay? I decided to look other materials, right? And the first thing I decided to do this, the way I did this firsthand, when I was trying to come up with ideas with the Moon DT, so what I basically did was this, right? I decided to use Luffy's fight with Inaru as an example, right? Since Luffy's body is rubber, or it's basically, so basically his body does not conduct electricity, right? However, keep in mind, rubber is not the only thing in the world that can help conduct electricity or anything like that. There could be other things as well, alright? So I decided to use that as basically a way to pave a general idea on what I can look forward, okay? When I was first coming up with ideas to represent the moon, or like a transformation, I was originally going with something like porcelain, alright? And porcelain was something I really thought could actually work, okay? One of the general ideas I was thinking for porcelain was doing some kind of porcelain and doll transformation, alright? That was sort of the general idea I was going with firsthand. However, eventually, my mind sort of changed over to glass. As I was doing more research, I decided to, I don't remember exactly how it sort of transcended into glass, but it just, to put it simple, as I was just doing more research, glass sort of just came into the way, and it's just like glass was just sort of like the best option in my case, okay? And what I was sort of presenting here is that with the sun god turning the user's body into rubber, I thought that maybe it could be potentially a good idea if the Moon deity turns the user's body into glass. And furthermore, as I was doing research on the entire thing, as I kept doing research, I came across something referred to as the basic type of materials, okay? There are a lot of materials in the world, right? However, most of these materials that are basically most of these materials can be actually categorized or divided into 4 specific types of categories, right? However, we only really need to focus on 3, all right? These 3 categories are polymers, ceramics, and metals. Luffy's Stealth Fruit, being the Gum Gum Fruit, turns his body into like a rubbery state. Rubber is an elastomer, right? Which is a category of polymer, right? Luffy would basically be the polymer. That leaves ceramics and metals. Glass is a ceramic. Most ceramic makers or glass makers don't really consider them the same thing. The easiest way to sort of explain it is like this, right? Ceramic can be divided into 2 categories, crystalline and non-crystalline, okay? Glass is a non-crystalline amorphous solid, alright? That's what glass is. So I chose glass as the thing to represent the moon. And then for the earth deity, I decided to go with ferrous metals, alright? Ferrous metals basically contain iron. Non-ferrous metals do not. That is the two categories of the metals, okay? And that was sort of the presenting arc that I was sort of laying down on that, okay? Now, I did mention that I would have to do a part 2. This is not the part 2 to that video, but is sort of like an added on to that video that I made, okay? And I'll get the whole part 2 out as soon as I can. The whole part 2 that I really want to try and figure out is thinking of anything I can really potentially think of some ideas for the whole metal aspect, okay? How can I add that into it, okay? That will basically be the part 2 when I get to it, right? Further in the video, I sort of laid down another idea that I was thinking for the name of the devil fruit, right? So, I'm basically presenting the name of the devil fruit as the Hito Hito no Mi model Hari, which can be nicknamed the Nico Nico no Mi, okay? However, I might have to even just go with the Hito Hito no Mi model Nico. And the idea is presenting the names itself, okay? So I have Gara Gara no Mi and then Nico Nico no Mi, okay? Gara Gara is sort of taking inspiration on two different matters, right? Gara Gara can be seen as an onomatopoeia, or basically read as an onomatopoeia for words or meanings such as gargle, raspy, rattle, but it can also refer to empty, right? Especially since if you look at the spelling of Gara Gara along with Kara Kara, their spellings are very similar, okay? And Kara Kara can actually, the kanji for Kara is the same as Sora, okay? Kara can translate or basically mean something empty, okay? Not to mention, using Gara Gara was a good way to reference the glass, alright? Gara Gara or Gara, add a su to it, you get Garasu, which is basically glass, alright? The whole idea that I was sort of presenting on the continuation in that video was going over the idea and more of the whole devil fruit name, okay? I mentioned before that you could probably consider it two different names of possibility, right? The glass fruit or the empty fruit, alright? That was sort of laying down on the idea of it, okay? That I would still accept the glass fruit, but I would, to put it simple, I decided to think very carefully, and I thought it would be really interesting to consider it the empty fruit, right? And the reason why I decided to do this was sort of going over the idea of how the devil fruit also has the ability to manipulate and control the emotions of others, right? And I thought it would be a good way to establish the idea that the moon deity is presented as someone who is void of emotion, someone who is empty on the inside, okay? That was the idea that I was presenting here, okay? Now, what do I really want to discuss in this topic of this video right now? What am I really going to go, right? I'm just going to add on a few extra things that I think could be really interesting for the power itself, okay? Alright, so for the power, I did mention the transformations, alright? The first transformation is sort of taking the concept of like a light bulb, okay? First, the user's body like glows in the dark, then they're able to like, basically like inflate part of their bodies like that, say like their fist. Think of the concept of glass blowing, alright? That is basically the concept, okay? The second form after that was basically the idea of the mirror form, alright? Basically allowing their body to make copies of other persons, alright? And the way I presented that was no matter who is looking at that person would basically see themselves among that person, alright? If Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji all basically put their eyes on Nami, alright? While she is in this transformation state, they are only going to see themselves, right? Zoro is going to see himself, Luffy is going to see himself, and Sanji is going to see himself, alright? That's the way it works, alright? The next one after that was the window form, right? The window form basically allows the person to basically turn their body into like a transparent like body, right? Think of the same vein as like, you know, the invisible fruit. However, when you're casting your eyes upon this person, you're sort of seeing the outside world, okay? You're sort of seeing like an outside world from the inside, okay? And the way I was sort of presenting here is that when the user's body break, right? The entire weather that you're seeing has basically just come inside, right? It's more of like you've been teleported to a brand new, it's like you've been sort of teleported to another plane of existence, but in reality, you're still there, right? And it's not the fact that the body or the user was the glass window itself. They were the weather that was hiding behind the glass window, right? The glass window was more of just like a barrier shell that they could control, but in reality, they were the weather of their choosing, the weather of their choice that they preferred to use, right? That was the idea that was presenting here, right? And the awakening is basically taking the inspiration of like paint on glass animations, and also thinking of the idea of like adding in sort of like rainbow effects, okay? Sort of like rainbow effects, okay? You can even think of the idea like glass art, okay? The main premise of what I want to discuss now is adding in something that I think could be really interesting, okay? So one idea that I'm sort of like thinking of how this could actually work is going over the idea of the empty part of it, okay? The user's body is empty on the inside, okay? Imagine if Nami did eat the devil fruit, okay? If she did, imagine the possibilities if, say for instance, if Nami lost her current climate attack, okay? But she still managed to keep Zeus, okay? The climate attack was completely destroyed, but Zeus managed to like live, okay? Zeus is free from the climate attack and he's all free, okay? Imagine if Nami was able to allow Zeus to actually live inside her. And because of how glass is, I was actually presenting the idea that I could see the whole glass fruit or empty fruit as a Logia type, okay? In a way of how Luffy's devil fruit is basically listed as like a paramecia type, even though it's a mythical zone type. I could see the opposite category for Nami's instance for this devil fruit, okay? Where it's classified as a Logia type, okay? And the way I'm presenting here is how the power can actually work, okay? So let's say Nami eats the devil fruit, okay? If you were to attack Nami, her body would break, okay? It would basically shatter apart. And depending on how, well, it actually depends on how strong the attack is, right? If the attack is mildly inside that, then most likely she would just get like cracks around her body, but her body would eventually restore, right? If the attacks are very severely, or something like very hard and strong, the body would completely break apart completely, right? And the body would basically regenerate and reform together, right? I'm sort of adding in the concept of like a glass puzzle, right? Sort of like thinking of the idea of doing like a glass puzzle, okay? And going into it, because the user's body is empty on the inside, right? I was thinking of like how strange it would be if Nami was able to allow Zeus to live inside her, okay? And basically use Zeus to further add into the whole strength of her abilities, right? To sort of like add into it even further, okay? Imagine if Nami was able to create like an axe hand and stuff like that, and she was able to use have Zeus merge with it, right? Become one with it, okay? Right? Or imagine if she was able to create like a mace itself, right? The idea I'm presenting here is how glass is referred to as an amorphous, right? Amorphous is just basically something that has no shape or form, okay? Even though glass does have like a shape, it doesn't have a definite shape because it can always change its form, okay? That is why glass is sort of like an amorphous solid, because its molecules are different, okay? From other basic materials, right? Especially non-crystalline, right? Its patterns are different than what a regular crystalline would be, okay? And that is like really something interesting here, okay? Another idea that I was sort of presenting here is how I think glass could really work for the layout of the abilities itself, okay? So with Luffy's devil fruit being the sun god, right? His powers are more focused on like, he has sort of like a fire theme, okay? And I thought lightning could still work very well for Nami, right? And I think lightning could be very well established for the idea for the moon deity who has the body made of glass, okay? And maybe to further strengthen this, or to further add into it even further, imagine the idea that if Nami did lose her climate attack, okay? But Zeus still managed to survive. Imagine how insane it would be if Nami was able to allow Zeus to actually live inside her, okay? And then she was able to use Zeus to sort of like add into further more attacks, okay? Imagine if she was to further her, imagine if she was further to enlighten her glowing body even further, to the point to where she was able to like create blindness, okay? Like create like a burst of blindness even further, right? Or imagine the idea if he's able to increase the after effects of the well, I can't exactly think of how he could affect the mirror portion, but I could think of the weather idea, right? If he was inside the body and it's like that, then imagine how it could actually be for him to actually work with Nami in terms of the weather, right? Imagine if, say for instance, like there is a big giant like storm cloud, okay? Nami has basically turned into the whole window form, and then she manages to get the opponent to break the body, and as soon as the body breaks, the giant massive storm comes inside, and yet you have Zeus inside there, but also you have Nami as an insane storm cloud, alright? Like, both of them are massive storm clouds controlling the weather inside to their proportions, alright? Literally decimating completely decimating their opponent, alright? And thinking of the further of how it could actually add within the awakening, okay? Where, imagine if the cloud that surrounds the user has basically been transformed, or basically allowed sentient, okay, to where it actually has Zeus formed into it, okay? Imagine if Zeus is actually one with the cloud itself, okay? I think that could be really interesting. I think that would be completely insane. That if that could actually occur, I might actually want to see it, okay? Now, I'm sure people have made fan art before. I've seen some like fan art out there where people have sort of like given Zeus as like a fusion with Nami, such as like her hair being all like cloud-like and adding Zeus to the effect of it. But I really think that if that could actually potentially work, I really think it could be more suitable for Zeus to merge with like the cloud-like around the basically the cloud-like structure that hangs around it. Okay, I think that would be the best thing to represent. Okay. Now, you might also think that's a bit crazy. That would be that would sort of like thinking it too much, right? That would sort of like, well, look, I'm not trying to force anyone to necessarily like the idea. I just want to basically talk about it, right? I just want to sort of like explain it, okay? That I just think that this could potentially work, okay? But I am perfectly okay with Oda just basically telling his story, okay? I'm okay with being wrong, alright? I don't want to be right, just for the sake that Oda has to tell my version of the story, alright? I want Oda to tell his story, alright? He's telling it just the way he wants, and I respect him for that. These are just some ideas that I have, and I can have some pretty crazy ideas, okay? Really crazy ideas. Alright, so that was sort of what I wanted to add into it, okay? That if, and that's a big if, okay? If this power exists, and the idea that I was presenting is that the user's body becomes glass, but like an empty glass, okay? If Nami lost her climate attack but still had Zeus, then imagine the idea of how it could be presented if she was able to allow Zeus to live inside her because she's like an empty shell, okay? An empty shell that's made of glass, okay? I thought that could be really interesting here, okay? It's something that could be very unique and very presenting, okay? And furthermore, just like it basically stated, with him living inside her, it would be very interesting in how he can sort of add into the powers themselves, or basically the transformations, alright? I still can't think of how it could affect the mirror one, alright? If anyone can think of something of how it could actually increase the mirror portion of it, feel free to let me know. I can't really think of anything. And then the whole thing with the weather idea and the whole window, the window, break the window, the outside world has come inside, alright? That is sort of the idea that I'm sort of presenting here that I think could be really unique, okay? Alright. So, that will do it. That's all I got for this video. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Cliff. If you liked the video and you liked anything I stated or anything I presented as sort of the general idea, please let me know by smashing that like button, alright? Subscribe to the channel, and please, if you really did enjoy it, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. And that will do it. Thank you so much for joining me. And as I finish off the video by saying goodbye, good night, here is a picture of Nami.